You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers and other important people from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about where my tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. Well, this week we're going to start our occasional look into the candidates running for local offices in Nassau County this November 7th. We're starting with the office of the Town Supervisor of the Town of Hempstead, which is currently Republican Don Clavin. Mr. Clavin is being opposed this year by Democrat Olena Nicks, and Ms. Nicks is joining us in studio today to talk about the issues and why she believes she may be the best choice for the role this election day. Welcome to this week's Long Island News.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us and spending some time. So first, let's start learning a little bit more about you, and of course, in light of the transparency, especially since George Santos, we started asking, we had him here too. But your website says that you graduated from Uniondale High School.
I did.
And City University of New York, Baruch College. Got your MBA from American University.
I did.
And you've worked as a teen advocate for Planned Parenthood. You're also president of the Uniondale Public Library. Mm-hmm. And the first woman captain of Manor Company 3 of the Uniondale Fire Department.
That's correct.
Wow. I'm imagining you in that fire gear doing,
Yeah. It has been quite a time. And, I want to first say that all those things are true and they are verifiable. So,
right.
But yes, so, I grew up here in Uniondale. So, Nassau Community College actually is one of the areas that we cover in the Uniondale Fire Department.
Okay.
So we come here pretty frequently,
wow.
And it's fun. I've been in for July 11th will be 12 years for me. And it has been such a journey because when I left high school, I knew that I wanted to continue giving back to the community. I just wasn't sure in which realm. And I saw there was, at the time, there used to be signs on like the light poles that would say, looking for volunteers. And one day I called and there was a guy that said, okay, well, come on down and we'll see what you're interested in. And my first year in, I joined the EMS. And I didn't really like it much. I wasn't really into medical. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't my forte.
Yep.
I needed probably a little bit more action. And I eventually transferred over to an engine company where I am now that I love tremendously. And, rose through the ranks and became the first woman captain of that company. So, we have 4 companies within our fire department. And I became the first woman, which is pretty monumental for me. It is also...
I think on Long Island is pretty monumental. Yeah.
It is. Also for Uniondale, because we've had a tremendous year. This year we also elected our first woman chief in our 100-year history.
Wow.
So
that's a big one.
We are.
I'm familiar with it's volunteer fire department.
It is.
Yeah. I think people are pretty aware of the idea that Long Island is covered by volunteer fire departments.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people think we get paid.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know. And there has been some action on at least getting volunteer firefighters some credits toward insurance or things like. My dad was a volunteer fireman. Oh, I marched with the fire department in the band. Back in the Stone Age, when they actually had bands marching, they don't do as much of it these days as they did then. But to work your way up just to being the captain of one of the companies is big. It's traditionally, all the guys. It's the good old boys club.
It's very true.
But I knew quite a few volunteer firemen who were also city firemen at the same time. So they brought that knowledge that they had back to the local fire departments, and the training was great.
It is.
But I can totally understand why you wouldn't be interested in EMS and might be interested in engine company. It's a little hotter in engine company.
It is.
Generally.
Yeah.
But the EMS work can be maybe not what you expect.
Correct. It is. It's not for everyone. And I think that most people who join already know that that's what they want to do.
Right.
And I think that the moment I joined, I kind of had an idea that I did want to go into fire. But I think, again, with traditional roles, typically they assume that most women come in, they want to join EMS, they want to do medical, they want to help and, give aid and care.
Yeah, right.
And I was kind of pushed in that direction. So, I said, okay, I'll try it out. And I didn't like it. And I said, okay, no, it's not for me.
Well, it's good that you could go in and then make a left turn and
absolutely
do something else. Yeah. Very good. I'm curious, what do you do now?
So right now I work for NYU, so #1 healthcare provider in New York City. I am a financial analyst with them, and I work predominantly with doctors who utilize funding from the NIH to conduct research to improve healthcare across to different recipients. So right now I'm predominantly working with doctors who focus on using radiology in different modalities, whether it's psychiatry, Alzheimer's, knee replacements, things like that, to pretty much improve the quality of care and make informed decisions. There are a lot of grants that are coming out now and studies that my doctors are working on, a focus around COVID, because that, it was huge, but now the after effects are going to be tremendous. And we really need to know how that's going to impact us down the long run. So a lot of my day to day is focusing on how we're going to utilize this funding, how our doctors are going to recruit subjects to ensure that there's going to be equity within the subjects, to make the best informed decisions.
Right. So you're in there to get the biggest bang for the buck. Basically, right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out what'll work best for the long term.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what's your vision for the town of Hempstead. Your Don Clavin is in your sights, and you're going to vie for this seat. What brought you to that? So
I don't want to, people always say like, oh, it's not really me versus Don Clavin. I mean, it is on the ballot, but
the optics are going to be that way.
I know. It's really me supporting and trying to uplift the communities as much as possible and trying to bring a new vision. So, the town of Hempstead for a very long time has kind of floated in a very neutral way. So not a lot of ruffle and shake, and it's kind of just every day, not a lot has changed. When, we're America's largest township, we should be setting the tone for every other township throughout America, every other community throughout America. Right. We should have those leading technologies, and we're currently not. And in the town of Hempstead, like I said, I live in Uniondale. Mm-hmm. And my vision really is to push communities like Uniondale to become more walkable communities. Because if you go into Uniondale now, you really don't notice, there is no town center. You can't really see where the town begins, where people kind of hang out. And I think that causes for an issue, especially because Uniondale is a very diverse community. And when we look at the statistics of things, they say that typically minority communities tend to face a lot more health inequities. And that's typically because of not just the way that urban communities are set up, but there's just a lot less access to certain things. So food deserts and a whole number of other things. Right. But if we start to create communities where they have those options and they're able to have a fitness center and have healthier choices and not 2 McDonald's, 5 laundromats, things like that, we may be able to create a sense of community where people feel like they can live, work, and utilize the resources in that community, but also bring back what we're losing, because studies are showing all over that sense of community is losing. We're losing it.
I think a part of when you talk about a town center, one of the things that seems to be prevalent on Long Island is towns trying to create those things. Mm-hmm. They use Farmingdale as a model. Often.
Yes.
Farmingdale is all restaurants and bars. Mm-hmm. There's probably not a clothing store in Farmingdale. Those types of businesses can't afford that real estate.
Right.
And my question is always, when is that boom going to bust?
Right.
Because they've got all your eggs in one basket. It's if people come to eat to town, then you're good. But if they stop, you're done.
Right.
Although, it's strange. It's like you say, people are eating McDonald's. Some people are thankful McDonald's is there because they really can't afford to eat the way that we would say they should. They'll put out a list. Oh, you should be eating this many vegetables. And people look at that list and equate it with the supermarket and say, no way.
Can't afford it.
Can't eat like that.
I know.
So, yeah, McDonald's, but thankful it's there.
Right.
That they can.
It's something.
Yes. But I'm from the time when McDonald's first came out, you got a Happy Meal and all that stuff and got change from your dollar. Now you go in there with a family of 5 and you get each kid a meal at night. You're walking out of there with an $80 bill.
I know.
And that's considered the cheap side.
Right. I mean, and I talk about this all the time. We're facing an affordability crisis. And, especially, which ties into what my vision is, not just for this campaign, but for the future of the town, is also housing as well.
That's a big one.
Where, especially people my age, millennials, are trying to figure out what their next steps are when it comes to housing. And we know that there are solutions that can be done because we're seeing other states like Texas, the Carolinas, that are building and growing their millennial populations tenfold. And what they're doing is they're using or they're rezoning and pretty much taking their buildings and turning them into multi-use buildings. So they're
like abandoned malls and
correct.
Things like that you're talking about,
yes.
Right?
So they may throw a Target at the bottom of that mall and then the top is apartments.
Right.
And there is some offset to how much you have to pay for those apartments because Target's footing a lot of...
Well, that's always been our thing, though, right? That's the base that pays for schools is retail, or that's really the wrong name for... but it's the business taxes.
Right, the commercial tax.
The problem is nobody wants a business in their backyard, and nobody wants affordable housing in their backyard. And I bristle every time a newspaper writes affordable housing.
Because what's affordable to you doesn't mean affordable to me.
And I went and found what affordable meant to them, and I said that you have to be kidding.
Exactly.
But the future of Long Island, I mean, you can tell the way that when I say the veritable they, but they're pushing this idea of we all need to live in skyscrapers next to the train station.
Right.
Because that's what, cars, I mean, years ago, if you traveled east to go to work in the morning, you were going in the right direction because it was light.
Right.
Now there is no right direction. Both sides of the parkway are packed every morning, both ways. So more cars obviously isn't going to be the answer, and it's got to be a way to, which may be the reason why electric cars are coming in. They're not cheap, and most people who drive internal combustion engines are going to try to hang on to those babies for as long as they can. Yeah. But this is, the future, and it's coming whether we like it or not.
And, and I think that statement right there is most important. There is a lot of resistance against a lot of the initiatives that we're seeing coming because, a lot of people are just used to the old way of doing things.
They want to keep it the way it was.
And that's really why I'm in this race, is because we're kind of tired of seeing the old way of doing things. And there is a future of just new and upcoming that we need to prepare for. Even if we're resistant against it, we need to have a plan B for when it does get here, because we don't want to be stuck in the dust with no plan.
We need to just have a plan and then a plan B. But,
exactly.
Anyway, you're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is Olena Nicks, who's running on the Democratic ticket to become the next supervisor of the town of Hempstead in the election this November. So you talk about, like Uniondale, needing a town center or needing some focal point that I guess people feel like they're in a town rather than just driving through a place where there's a lot of buildings and houses.
Right.
Yeah. Is Uniondale working on that in some?
We are. We have a number of civic associations that have been banding together to see what can make us move forward as a hamlet, and what will create the best future for us. And I'm sure, as you know, we are also facing the Casino Sands project, which has also been a dividing factor for a lot of members in the community.
Sure.
And it's been a tough one.
Yeah.
It certainly has, because there are a lot of community members who have been very vocal that they don't want a casino here. And there are a lot of community members that are open and willing to hear what Sands has to say. And, for us, it's not just us. There are our neighboring communities. There are obviously the colleges that surround us.
Yep.
The school districts, the Kallenbergs. There are a lot of people that are placing their input, and we don't know what the impact is that's going to come. Yeah. And I think, honestly, the most ideal scenario is that Sands gets to build their resort vision, and maybe without the casino. And I think that's a win for everyone.
Do you think they will?
I think they will. I think based off of them already getting the lease, and that being approved to them, I think that they'll still build, because
I think we should look historically and traditionally at because this isn't the first deal that the Sands has made with any town. I can remember back in the days when Atlantic City was going to be saved by casinos. Right? That was the story. And yet when those casinos were built, if you went to Atlantic City, and most people did not look at the surrounding suburban neighborhood that used to be there, they got out of their car and they walked into the front door of the casino, and you didn't see them again until they were ready to go home.
Right.
The town went to hell.
And that's why I say maybe the casino per se is not needed, but if Sands wants to build their resort or hotel vision, or because from what I understand, it's supposed to be like some type of multi-use.
Yeah. They were only supposed to have, I believe, 10%. Is for the casino.
Right. So if we change that 10% into something very different.
Yeah, the question is, where does the Sands get its revenue?
Right.
Because that's the revenue stream they're looking for, not a hotel.
I know.
They're not really in the hotel business.
I get it.
It's a good question, but I think the whole Coliseum saga, I had, I believe one of the lawmakers was in here, and he said, we made a mistake. We missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't think that it ever should have been discarded. And then they spent $11 or $13 million on making the outside look nice, and took out seats so that it was no longer an NHL regulation hockey rink.
I know.
We paid for that.
And now it's just sitting there.
It's like, anyway, there's a quote here. You were quoted by the Long Island Herald as saying that you're running to, quote, stand up for families in the largest township in America and be the voice they need. Now, who is that you're actually speaking of? Who are you going to be the voice for that you feel?
So when I said that quote, I really thought about a number of different individuals. I first thought about those individuals and families who came out during the redistricting process and spoke and were very vocal during that process. And then at the time of the vote, the board decided to vote unanimously on the maps, even after all those community residents came out and discuss.
So the board was basically deaf.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was heartbreaking because good government to me, regardless of Republican, Democrat, whatever your party position is when you're able to be held accountable by your constituents. And if you cannot take into account what your constituents have come out and expressed to you, then what's the point?
Right.
And, at that point, the voters were silenced.
Accountability is a big issue in all of the things that we see today.
It is.
They tell us we're a country of laws. And I spoke to the police commissioner here, and he said that. He said we're a country of laws. And I responded that, there are financial people who wrecked this economy and admitted to criminal wrongdoing. They admitted that what they did was criminal. Not one of them stood in front of a judge. Not one. So I kind of said to him, when I see that, then I'll agree with you that we're a country of laws. But the way it stands right now, and I think it translates to politics in the sense of having political will. People can talk about doing the right thing, but when it comes to, put up or shut up, they shut up
every time.
Yeah. And I think the whole system needs a revamp. We're looking at a way that we work that doesn't work.
We're not living in those times anymore. Yeah. And I mean, what's wonderful is you see there are other states, and the particular state that I'm thinking about is slipping me, but where the governor just his term is up, where they're implementing term limits, but we don't see that here. And it really probably could be very beneficial to us because it's sometimes can lead a little bit to a more amicable transition of power. Sometimes. Well, I won't say always.
We had this discussion, but it was actually about the length. Legislators here do 2 years. So you're constantly in a state of campaigning because
you get nothing done in 2 years.
Right. But the people, I get this sense that they don't want to make it 4 years because if you're a candidate that gets into office and they really don't like you, or you're really a negative energy, not a positive energy, they don't feel you can do too much damage in 2 years. If I give you 4 years and I find out that you're a negative energy, oh my gosh, now I can't get rid of you for 4 years. So I think that's what the fence is about. It's
tough.
People feel like that could take away some of my power. If I have to vote for this guy every 2 years, then at least I have a say.
But when you're voting every 2 years, sometimes voters are getting voter apathy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I think it should all be publicly funded. You give everybody the same amount of money and say, if you're the genius that you're telling me you are, then you'll get elected over all these other people spending the same amount of money that they did. But when you realize, even in a national election, and I was quoted this by someone, is that if you wanted to run for president tomorrow, that's going to cost you $1 billion.
It's so much money.
And yet, we still have that nice old saying that anybody can be president.
Right.
Not so much.
Not really true.
No, not so much. Not in this climate, anyway.
No.
Talking about disparate treatment, what communities would you feel are maybe not getting the attention and the help they need to flourish?
I definitely think when we look at communities like Roosevelt, Hempstead, and Hempstead's tough because Hempstead's a village, so that share of power sometimes can be difficult. But again, we need someone who's going to go in and kind of work with that across the board with the mayor. And, I think that the mayor there is doing a good job. He's, in his tenure so far. But again, we need for our representatives to communicate across the board. And what it seems like more and more is that the township's leadership, and that's just the town, and the state leadership, that's the state leadership, and they just point their fingers and they say,
"It's not my road, you fix it."
Correct. And it's like, no, we need to join hands because at the end of the day, these are all our constituents, all our residents, they all vote for us. And they could care less when there's a pothole in their street. Who owns the street? They just want it fixed. Yeah. And we owe them that. We owe them to be able to work together.
How does a revamping of a town, or does it? It doesn't begin with gentrification, but is that where the real power is? And is, if like I've recently heard a couple of people I know now live in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now, when I was a kid, that was a scary word.
Right.
People said that, and you were like, "Oh, you don't want to go there." And now it's come back.
Right.
But that has to be gentrification that did that to a degree. And the people that used to live there no longer do.
Right.
And the question is, what happens to them? If this is the way that we have to rebuild our towns, we're really shuffling the population
somewhere else.
Maybe to places they don't want to go, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I don't know that you can do that without changing the face of the place. You can't have the same old buildings in the same, and all of a sudden you got a great town. That doesn't, it's developers and, and then tax breaks for richer people than us. And, all of those things that go into that. So it's always a battle.
I think that's kind of like a multi-layer question, because with that statement, then it's to say that it's the people that can't.
It starts with discontent. People are not happy with the way things are.
Right.
Okay, so then what
then we need to do something to get them to become re-engaged, to build them to be reconnected. And that could look like a number of things, and it's certainly not an overnight thing.
Oh, no. Well, we don't have much time left. Do you have the listeners? What would you like to say to your listening audience?
Really, for me, I would just like to say that from, for the next few months and, if elected, that I am really at this point running a grassroots campaign. I'm excited to be on the ground and throughout communities and really listening to get to understand each and every community, because each issue is very unique. And I won't pretend that I understand what's going on everywhere, because you'll be surprised when you go to every community. But I think that the top issues for all of us that we are all facing is certainly the affordability crisis, ensuring that, we have clean air, clean water, because those things are important too. And we all need that.
Web pages and contact information. How do people find you? Yes.
So my website is olenanicks.com. My email is info@olenanicks.com. So that's pretty much the best way to get to me.
All right, very good. Well, you're stepping into the fray.
I know.
Right? And,
it's quite all right.
And in this day and age, I don't think we know what that means until we get into the middle of the battlefield and say, "Oh my!"
Yeah.
It's a lot to bite off, and it'll affect your whole family, and everybody. But you look like you got the energy.
Thank you.
I think you do. Well, my guest today has been Olena Nicks, who is running on the Democratic ticket to become the next supervisor of the town of Hempstead in the election this November. And again, thank you for taking the time to be here today to speak with us. And hey, good luck in the election.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can listen to us by searching for this week's Long Island News wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're right here every Friday on the radio, on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.